Welcome to everyone that's here. We're gonna give people another probably minute before we get started, and then we're gonna get started with the debate. We're super excited that everyone's here. Just so that our attendees know, you guys are all muted, but in the meantime, if there's questions that you want us to address later in the debate, go ahead and use the FAQ function that you're going to see at the bottom of your, sorry, it's called the Q&A function that's at the bottom of your Zoom. And the session is being recorded, so if for whatever reason you have to jump out, don't worry, we're going to share the recording with you a little bit later. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start. Welcome to everyone that's joined us. My name is Hila Meller. I am the editor-in-chief of Productcraft. If you are signed into the webinar, then you probably already know about Productcraft. So we're super happy to see you here. If you don't know about Productcraft and you somehow still made your way here, Productcraft.com by Pendo is a publication, a magazine for product managers, product designers, growth folks, anyone that's interested in product. We publish every day. So go ahead and check that out and sign up to our newsletter, which you can do on the site. And one of our favorite features on Productcraft is our debate club, which we publish once a week. And the debate club has really been a place for a select group of product leaders from a bunch of cool companies to debate questions related to product management and growth of companies. It's been one of our most successful features on the site. And we've been doing live debate clubs all over the country for the last 6 months or so, and finally decided, it was time that we could bring the debate club to a webinar so that people who can't make the physical locations could enjoy this awesome format. And so I'm super excited that today we have 3 wonderful panelists who are all debate club veterans. I'm going to introduce them in 1 second. I want to just repeat a couple of housekeeping things. Everyone, all of our attendees are muted right now. However, please use the Q&A function on Zoom to send us your questions as they pop up. And we're going to spend a few minutes at the end of the debate taking questions from the audience and debating those. So we hope everyone has a lot of fun. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists, and then you're going to be able to see them because it will be a little bit more interesting than looking at a slide. So our first panelist is Sam Boonen, who's the VP of Product Strategy at Zendesk. Sam has been an esteemed member of the online debate club from inception. And Sam's been in Zendesk for 6 years and has a variety of leadership roles across product and go-to-market. He spent the last 15 years guiding innovative technologies to market in startups and big companies alike. And Sam is in Dublin today at the Zendesk office. So this is by far our most international webinar that we've ever had. So that's Sam. We're going to say hi to him in a second. Our second panelist is Nikki Koritsky, who's the VP of Product at Shutterstock, where she leads product, obviously, and is responsible for defining and driving the product strategy across all Shutterstock properties and brands. Previously, she was the Vice President of Head of Digital Product Development at Christie's and has also run mobile product at several companies. And Nikki has also taught a mobile product development course at NYU. And she's in New York City, as am I. And then our final panelist is David Schwartz, who's the VP of Product at Wix. And he heads Wix product management, as well as Wix stores, Wix bookings, and Wix Boost, which he's going to speak to a little bit later. David is based in Tel Aviv. He has also a lot of experience both in startups and as a founder, and has taught several classes at NYU, Columbia, Hebrew University, and other MBA programs on issues ranging from product development and management to marketing and innovation trends. So these are our awesome crew of panelists. We're going to go ahead and start with the first questions that I have for you guys, which is, should every company have a CPO? The main reason I'm actually asking this question, and it's a question that I feel like is hotly debated in a lot of growing companies today, is that we have three panelists who are all VPs of product. And I'm wondering if that matters to you guys, and if you feel that the CPO, the Chief Product Officer, is a really important role that every company needs to have now. Sam, I'm gonna let you go ahead and start.
Sure. Thanks for having us. It's fun to do this. I don't think that you necessarily need a CPO by title. A lot of times in startups, it's an honorific that goes to a founder. Sometimes it goes to an important strategic hire that you make. So I don't think the actual title is important. What I do feel like is important is that there is a single executive product leader who is kind of recognized as such. If you want to call that person a CPO, that's great. Sometimes it's the CEO, sometimes it's another title. So I do think that while I don't care about what the title is, I do think it's important to have, that individual clearly identified in the company, especially as, companies go from startup to scalable company and people change out and the like.
Sure. David, I'm going to have you respond next, just because we had a conversation about this before. And I think Wix has a really interesting organizational structure when it comes to how they treat product. So what's your take on this CPO question?
So first, thanks for having us. Lots of fun, like Sam said. Let's start with what's happening here in Wix, which is kind of a different business model, a different structure model. Wix is broken to more or less 28 independent organizations. We call them companies. They all have all the functions within them reporting to the CEO of the company. So they have their head of product if it's a big company, or a product manager if it's a small company. But basically, with their chairman, which is someone from the management of Wix, that accompanies them, has the liberty to make all their decisions, including product decisions. The role of VP product or CPO, which doesn't really matter, it's more of a title thing in Wix, is basically to teach the entire organization how we do product management as methodology throughout the organization. So it's more recruiting more product managers and guiding the way we do product in Wix and making the actual product decisions, which is done by my product managers, but under their CEOs and their chairman, which I'm also filling this function for several of the companies inside Wix. To tell you that that's the best model existing, I don't know. It works for us. The advantages are it's more agile, it's smaller organizations that are function as startups and allow the product manager more accountability and ownership and independence regarding their products, which I like. It also allows us to attract lots of ex-founders of startups, which we find to be really great product managers. The disadvantage is that obviously when there are dependencies, and there are inner company collaboration requirements, it's harder than in a regular, I would say, organizational structure. So there's pros and cons.
Interesting. I think that's also, kind of touches on the question of this adage at this point of that product is the CEO, or that product managements are the CEO in their own way, right? That they're CEOs of little companies within companies. So I think it's interesting that you guys kind of took that and turned it into an actual organizational structure. Nick, do you want to respond to this a little bit as well?
Yeah, I've seen this work well on both sides. About a year ago, Shutterstock moved to a similar model that David's talking about. We had general managers, and we kind of broke up our product teams to be paired with general managers overseeing different verticals within our business. I think we also got to a place, kind of like what David's saying, where the interdependencies became difficult to manage because then it was kind of a question of who's going to make the final call. If there are GMs or chairmans, whatever you want to call them, or CEOs of individual business lines, and there are those interdependencies, who does the deciding on kind of which group will get to have their product made first, or basically gets their roadmap requirements signed off on. We also realized that we were building very big discrepancies within the user experience because we kind of had siloed off the teams in such a way that everyone was kind of very focused on building out for very specific users or specific mandates and specific KPIs, but not really overarching understanding kind of like what that full end-to-end user experience is. So we actually did a switch in about September of this year, changing back to being under one head of product. And I actually find that it makes it easier for me to kind of see where all the things are going and to draw those similarities. We've also really helped to cut down redundancies on teams that are working kind of independently. So it's been a really good shift back. I think it really depends on the stage of growth of the business and kind of where you are in terms of how many teams you're managing. Right now at Shutterstock, we have about 20 different product teams. So it just became unwieldy.
Right. And I think the question, this is kind of a sister question to this, but, where should product report? I know that this is a question that we've debated internally at Pendo. This is a question that's debated across the board, I think, in a lot of places. And even if you don't have a CPO, sometimes you might still have a product organization where individual product teams will report into that organization, or at other places it will go into engineering or into marketing. David, I want to just jump back to you specifically because this kind of interesting organizational structure. Do you feel that product needs to report into product, or does product need to report into another department?
Again, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. I think there are pros and cons for each model. I must admit that personally, I find, not only in Wix where products basically report, like a VP product and a VP engineering report to the same CEO of a small company within the larger organization. I also been visiting many companies around. Amazon would be a good example where you have small teams led together by a product manager and a technical. I think it works great for them. And I think it allows them to be as agile as a small company, even when they become a huge giant. So all in all, I think that if innovation, agility, creativity are important to your organization, ownership, accountability, and independence from the product manager are better achieved when they're not part of a hierarchical organization, but more of a flat organization. But on the other hand, if optimization, saving resources, preventing what Nikki spoke about, duplicate efforts, this is something that happens many times, can be solved, by the way, with microservices to some extent. So one company can use the code of other company, but to some extent only. So if important is, saving efforts, doing optimization, and allowing management basically to be more in control of the product and saving interdependencies more efficiently, then a more traditional organization structure works. There's no right or wrong answer here.
Okay, that's fair. It's an answer that we get a lot, obviously, that it very much depends on the size of the company and the stage of growth of where the company is at and where they're trying to go. I want to shift gears a little bit from talking about organizational structures to talking about the kind of PMs that you guys are looking for, because David just spoke a little bit about the characteristics that he looks for in a PM. And specifically, I want to ask the question of, do you guys feel that product manager needs to have technical background? Nikki, I want to start with you because I know that your background is definitely more liberal artsy, and you have a background also in publishing and in journalism. And so I want to start with you and hear the argument that you will make for this question.
Sure. So I feel very strongly, as you just mentioned, that you don't need a technical background. And I say that as someone who obviously doesn't have a technical background and been in product for a long time now. When I'm looking to hire, I'm really looking to hire natural problem solvers. And I think they can come in various flavors. I've hired product managers who've come out of finance or analytics and really have a very strong background in understanding data. I've hired product managers who've come out of UX, who understand customers, understand design. I've hired product managers who've come out of project management, who want to be more in the weeds of decision making. And really fundamentally, I look for people who know how to solve problems, understand how to execute, can be fairly autonomous and entrepreneurial, are great communicators, and understand how to get the right people in the room to help kind of make decisions and move roadmaps forward. So I think that they can come in all various flavors, and I never really check to see if they have a technical background. If they do, it's additive, clearly. But if I also will caveat this and say, if a role requires someone to be technical because they're working with a very specific back-end team, obviously that is a great advantage. Not having to teach them that, not having to have them get up to speed. on some of the lingo that the team might be using is really important. But I don't think it's product's job to define some of the how. I really think that really helps the partnership with engineering, when product can help to drive the business requirements and understanding of the user requirements, and let the engineers define the how.
I suspect both David and Sam are in agreement here because I see them nodding. But Sam, David, is there anything you guys want to add to this?
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think if there's one thing that I look for in a product manager, it's customer empathy. It's kind of the one thing that I can come up with and identify that like that's what makes a product manager. And I think the only time that you really require a technical product manager or product manager with a technical background is if your intended audience is technical by nature, or as Nikki was saying, that the problem that you're trying to solve requires a level of empathy with the engineering team you're working with. I actually typically prefer PMs without a technical background because I think it makes them a little more inquisitive and the like, as opposed to you have to have a technical background.
Sure. David?
I agree with both Nikki and Sam. I would add two things. One, empirically, I have like 150 product managers in the organization. I never found that ones that worked before in code or in QA are better or less good or more good than the others. So empirically, it works on both ways. I would say, and again, I agree with Sam that if there is a need for a very technical product manager, by the way, most often when you develop tools for developers, which they know the users better, so it may be an advantage. I would say though, that I do look in candidates the ability to speak technique. They don't have to write code in the past, they don't have to be QA in the past, but I need them to be able to speak very well to engineering teams. But empirically and rationally, I do not think you need to write code in your past in order to be good at that, although it may help.
Yeah, the other thing I'd add to that is that one advantage of being technical is that you're less likely to get bamboozled by your engineering team. Who might want to refactor something or might want to work on their technical projects and not work on things that you want to happen. So you need to be technical enough to be able to call bullshit on that. That's an advantage. But I too was a liberal arts major. My last code was written when I was 14, and I've been able to survive without a technical background.
And look at you now.
They can boost less on time frames as well if you have technical background. But you can work around that even if you don't have.
Yeah. And then, so since you guys kind of identified what's important for you, we've been getting a lot of questions. I've been having a lot of conversations with people who are just really struggling with hiring for PMs because they're trying to figure out like, okay, I know what the characteristics are, right? I want an inquisitive person. I want a person who can speak technisch, as you've labeled it, David. I want someone who's super organized maybe, or I want someone who can learn really quickly and can be agile. What has for you been the most effective way of interviewing PMs or giving them whatever homework assignments that have yielded the best results in terms of really finding those characteristics and really going after those? Nikki, why don't you go ahead and start?
Sure. So I really like to start, again, because some people are not coming in with product experience, I like to really just start with tell me a time that you had a bunch of issues or problems in front of you and how did you decide which one to solve? Walk me through scenario. Oftentimes I like them to kind of talk to real world life experiences. I'll look at resumes and say, tell me about a time when you were at this company, explain to me problems that you had to solve. How did you identify that that was a problem that was important? How did you prioritize it? How did you get buy-in for it? Walk me through your mindset and methodology of finding out, kind of like gathering data around the problem, doing that discovery work, refining it, then getting buy-in from a team to resource it. Tell me what that was like in terms of executing it, and then what was the result? So fairly generic. I would obviously be more specific based on looking at someone's resume, but I do think that that's really important to understand.
Yeah, we just got a comment from one of the attendees that's specifically about any thoughts on the 5 or 6 interview rounds in the company's pursuit of ensuring the product manager is a good fit necessary, or is that a bit too much? Nikki, what do you think?
So sometimes I would hope no one's going for 5 to 6 times in the office. I hope potentially it's just like one phone call and then you come into the office and maybe there's a business case and another conversation. I do think there's a couple aspects of hiring that are important. As we've mentioned, product, if you are a mini CEO of your business, you have a lot of stakeholders. So we do think it's important product managers, when they're interviewing, come in and meet with various people kind of cross-functionally, whether it's engineering, UX, data, potentially sales or marketing, because these are really the people that you're interacting with in a given day. It is important to show that you can communicate and kind of think about ways that you're going to interact with those different subsets of the business. And then I think it's important to show your stuff. Being able to do a business case, show your thinking is really important. Everyone can talk the talk, but being able to walk the walk and show it in a business case analysis is really where we've seen a lot of people succeed and flourish, or we've said, wow, that person was so great when they told us about all the things that they did, but their execution was totally off here. And then there's also a cultural assessment. I spend more time at work than I do with my family, and I want to make sure people I hire are people that I want to spend time with in the office. They're good people, they're good natured, they have perspective. And so getting that additional time just to kind of assess where we are culturally and kind of in terms of the relationship, I think are really important. So hopefully it's only a handful of touch points, but I think it's worth it for both sides.
Yeah. David, you guys have so many product managers. What's been most successful for you in terms of interviewing?
So it's not only interviews. I'm looking for several things in product managers. I think the most important thing is the ability to decipher the business logic, the user need, and the user intent, and translate them to a great product. In Wix, this is communicated through wireframes. So I think the most important part of the process is basically give the candidate a real problem that we confront now at Wix and let them do the wireframe that solves the problem. This allows me to know if they're good at that. It requires them time. It takes them like 2 days at home. We apologize on that. We explained it. We're transparent about that. But we're very picky, and that's super important for us. Besides that, they're interviewing both at my product organization professionally, where I'm trying to look for also their project management abilities. I'm looking for people who are really good in communications, like Nikki said, and people that are going to be fun to work with. And this is very good in interviews. That's done both by my people, the product guild, and also by HR. And we're also looking for this ability to speak technician. And this can be easily found in interviews and also with talks with former people that worked with them, which is also a very effective tool for us. All this leads to kind of a long process, which is a price we're paying. Also, because of our organizational structure that I mentioned before, the interview also with the product organization in Wix, but we also do one interview from the company they're going to be working with, because that's their small startup they're going to be working with. So the head of the company and head of the product, the company is big enough. This is a price we're paying. It's a long process relatively. We're trying to do it as painless as possible, but it's, as I said, everything is pros and cons, but I think we filter very well. Reason we do it is I think that a mediocre product manager can make such a disastrous things that you'll not be able to save in the future. So it's really important to me that they'll be really good.
Yeah. Sam, anything else to add on in terms of hiring?
I agree with the impact of a mediocre product manager. I think for us at Zendesk, one thing that I learned since I've been here is we do homework assignments for all product candidates. And it's very similar to what David described. It's a homework assignment, takes a day or two, and we force PMs to come in and present that to a group in the second round. So we try to keep things like phone screen by the hiring manager, one in-person round with a small panel, and then second round should be the closing round. And that walking the talk, I think, is really important for product managers, and then forcing it not only a homework assignment, but also seeing how they interact in a group presentation environment is important, because what Nikki said is that the role of PM is a role of influence, and you really have to be able to manage stakeholders and things along those lines. So one thing that I will take the rest of my career is the importance of, plus the other thing is that, the fifth time you have to walk through your resume in an interview process is just a terrible candidate experience. We've all been there ourselves. So one thing I'll take away is that, the value from both the company and sort of a job applicant standpoint of this homework assignment is just, has been really, really eye-opening and super effective for us at Zendesk.
Interesting. One of the things this is just coming to me now, but one of the things that I'm interested to hear you guys respond to is, I know in smaller companies, a lot of times, the product manager will be a person who came, like the first product manager will be a person who came from another role, right? Like it was, whether it was a marketing person or an engineer who really wanted to become more involved in product, or even a designer, or, even a customer support person. I know you guys are all at now very large companies, but curious to hear about what your thoughts are about making product managers out of people who are already in the company and kind of know the ins and outs of it. And does that make for a better product manager? Or do you feel that an external person who has more product management experience, whatever that means, from another company, is a better candidate? Nikki, I see you nodding, so I'm gonna go to you.
Yeah, I honestly think it doesn't matter to me. You can come from literally any group. We've taken a lot of internal hires here from people coming from various other teams, and we've picked them because they've been a great voice of customer. They understand the pain points of the customer. There's some things that you really can't teach. Someone just has to see through experience. And so for someone to raise their hand and say, I want to help solve this problem for the customer, I think it's really great. There's a lot about product that you can teach very easily. Agile methodology, you can take a course on it. You can teach it internally. We have speakers come here and talk to us about how we can improve our Agile methodology and practices. And that's something obviously that is different and changes in every company as well, what flavor of Agile you practice. So I do think that's something that's teachable. But again, I'd say the passion and interest and voice of customer is most important, and understanding of the true problem that you're looking to solve. So some of that, again, if someone's so willing to move from another team to help work on that problem, I think that's great. And you can't really force that.
Yeah. David?
This was a really curious question for me when I took over product at Wix. So I decided to take, I'm a product manager, so I like to look things through data. There were 140 product managers in Wix at the time. I kind of did a list. I threw it away afterwards, ranking them from 1 to 140, and searched for characteristics. And what I found is this. With the groups of product managers' background, I checked the background, and there were three groups that excelled, that were among the top ones. One were ex-entrepreneurs, people who started their own startup. We found out they make amazing product managers at Wix. Second group were students that grew up at Wix from very junior student product position to product managers. And that's not surprising, because we took the brightest ones and then we kicked out everything that wasn't super good. So there's kind of evolution. And the third group, which was kind of surprising, is people who had no relevant product experience, but excelled extremely in other fields. Just like Nikki said, sometimes with total no relation. One of my best product managers in Wix used to be a researcher of fungi in biology in the university. She's amazing. And there was also a group that had, not everybody, there are amazing people among them as well, but there was a group that had huge presence among the mediocre ones. And that was people with 3-4 years of experience in another product, in another company as product managers. So I totally changed the job requirements. No longer 3-4 years experience in product management, which was the former thing, but entrepreneurship, advantage. Excelled in other fields, advantage. And I think it brings me better people today. Though, I must admit, having said that, for senior positions, experience has its merits. So when I look for a head of product, I will not take someone who, for a company, I will not take someone with no experience. So it's kind of a balance.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd like to see that spreadsheet, David, or at least a representation of it.
Literally shift delete.
Right. Spoiler alert, I said customer empathy was the thing that I valued the most. And I think that people who are using or working with customers that have used your product have customer empathy at a much higher level than a professional product manager ever will. So I seek those people out. Sort of our 3rd, 4th, and 5th PM here at Zendesk were somebody who did pre-sales, somebody who did customer support, and somebody who used to be a customer of Zendesk, right? So those were really good. However, I think the anti-pattern that I worry about are people that have passion for I want to fix these things in your product, and I know exactly what I want to do. And if you let me be a product manager, I'll know exactly what to do. It is actually a really bad habit for product managers. So I think people who have the intellectual curiosity to do it are great, and people have the empathy to do it. But the challenge of non-product people and non-product background people is they think product management is easy. right? Make a bunch of decisions, tell engineers what to do, fix some things in the UI, and you're done. And I think the recognition that like product management's really hard and takes a tremendous discipline and dedication along with the empathy is interesting. But I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of hiring diverse teams in terms of background. I think it's really important. I still see the PM that I hired 6 years ago, like who is a support manager. And I'm like, dude, I told you were a product manager. You didn't believe me. And he's like, yeah, it turns out I am. So.
Great. I want to take a question. I know I said I was going to do this at the end, but as the questions are coming in, it seems like they fit now. This is a question from Mark Santosuso. Sorry if I butchered your name, but he's asking, how important is it for a product manager to be the subject matter expert versus relying on existing subject matter experts that already are within the organization? Sam, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the companies that I've worked for, I guess I've been lucky working for product-oriented companies. You know, there's a certain level of gravitas that a product manager or a product person has to have, right? And there are many ways of getting that. You could be a subject matter expert on the technology or the market or the underlying data or the business impact. I think it's just much easier for product managers when they have that gravitas, when they can gain respect. Doesn't have to be they don't have to be the world expert in, website design, like thinking about what Wix does, or the world expert in Zendesk about how great customer support is delivered. But I think some level of expertise does garner respect. And I think it is important for PMs, especially in larger organizations, to get stuff done. They need to have some level of respect. I think how you define that expertise could be anything, but I do think it is important.
Yeah. Nikki, David, either of you want to maybe take another position on this one?
I find that in some cases it's a huge advantage. As an example, when we did Wix Stores, the e-commerce solution, I found out that products that actually had an online e-commerce business in the past have huge advantage because they know this world and they used to live it. But not always you have this privilege. Sometimes you have an amazing product management skills person that is not a domain expert. And in these cases, I will sometimes hire a person who's not a product manager and is a domain expert. As an example, when we did Wix Payments, on top of the product managers, we hired a domain expert in payments. When I build Wix Promote, which is marketing tools for Wix users, I hired someone who used to have a marketing agency to simulate a marketing agency inside Wix with their users and give the feedback to product managers. Because I wasn't willing to give up people with amazing product management skills, even though they did not have experience in the domain and they did need a domain expertise.
Yeah, that makes sense. Nikki, do you want to respond, or do you feel like we covered this?
I would concur with both of them. I think the eternal problem with a specialist versus generalist conversation is that if your organization is in a constant state of flux, we've had to move around people who maybe came in as a specialist and now they're managing a team that they kind of had to learn about. Again, I do think that an agile, kind of adaptable person will take on that challenge, understand, again, either that user or kind of the domain, and try to learn as much as they can, and also find the right people to lean on to help provide the right knowledge and education about the things that they don't know. So there's always an opportunity to learn. And I've actually never worked in all the industries I've worked in. I've never known a lot about them before I've gotten there. And I think that there's a big opportunity to learn. You can kind of dive right in if you're really willing and able.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about what you guys think makes for successful product managers. How do you hire for successful product managers? But, we have a question coming in from Alexis. She's saying, we're talking about great product people, but, not really talking about mediocre product people. Can you elaborate on identifying traits of mediocre PMs and how could they be coached? I know a lot of companies, presumably some of you guys are doing PM courses within the company, like a lot of big companies are doing that now. Nikki, you spoke a little bit about, bringing external experts on Agile specifically, but can you guys, what is your guys' best advice in terms of coaching for excellence in product management? Nikki, you want to start?
Yeah, so when I think about people who I would maybe deem not amazing or mediocre, as we stated here, I often think about like, well, where are they falling down? And oftentimes, what I find is that it comes with potentially a lack of motivation or passion or kind of the entrepreneurial aspect of this job that I think we've all kind of hinted or touched upon. And then I start to think about, well, why is it that that person doesn't feel like they can take charge of their roadmap, or they can push this conversation forward, or they can make strides with their engineering team, or they can help unblock a dependency that the team is stuck on, whatever it might be. And those are things that I think you have to kind of do as a manager a deeper dive into. Is it that they don't understand their mission and their own autonomy and their own agency? In which case, as a manager, my job is to help kind of give them that guidance and framework and say, these are the things that I would expect, or here's where you have your own runway, go do it. Or is it that they're just fundamentally not motivated? Maybe they're not interested in the product. Maybe there's politics involved, who knows? So oftentimes when I see someone being mediocre, it's generally because they're not willing to kind of take the ball and run with it. And then I need to understand the why. And sometimes what's been interesting in having those conversations, I found out one of my product managers was like, well, actually, I'm realizing that I'm really more interested in UX and I'd rather work on UX than product. Great. Okay, let's have a conversation about how we can transition you to that team, what that would look like. It's usually that. It's something where motivation or understanding of their own role within the situation is part of the problem.
Yeah. David, what do you think was the best course of action for the people in the middle of your list?
As of turning a mediocre product manager to a good product manager, I have no idea how to do it. So I have no comment.
So that's why you got rid of the list, right?
Yeah. No, really. I mean, and in a culture, and I don't like to fire, so I think filtering is really important. But the more interesting question, at my perspective, is how to make a good product manager a great product manager. And that is something I think is my job description. I would say there are numerous things, but to name just a few that I think are the most important. Understanding that you work for your users or your customers, the way you like to call them, and talking to them constantly. I still talk to 3 users every day, either through chat on the Facebook or through other means, and I think that is the single most important thing a product manager can do. Constantly talk to users, constantly understand the business logic, the needs, the intents, the emotions. Live this. In the case of Wix, look at the websites they're creating all the time. See what is the result of your product. Play with your product all the time. I think that's the most important thing that makes a good product manager a great product manager. As for mediocres to good, I don't know.
Yeah, we actually, this is too fun. So we only have 20 minutes left. So I want to start addressing some of the questions that have been coming in. And this is a question that's related from Eugene. So Eugene's asking, what are some key metrics that effective PMs can or should be measured by in both near and long terms? And can you extricate a good PM's performance from such factors as revenue so they're not simply measured by sales results? Sam, shaking your head.
I wish that worked. Where you could come up with you sort of know, I think that's what David was saying. You kind of know a great PM when you have them, or you find them, or you grew them, or something like that. And it's kind of hard to, I found it's kind of hard to actually have clear measures, like great PMs have a higher feature delivery rate, or their features make more money, or cause less, technical or customer challenges, or whatever it is. I haven't been able to sort of, come up with the formula to measure product managers. I'd be super interested if somebody did and I could apply it, because it would make my life a lot easier. It's also like sometimes the best product managers tackle the hardest problems or work on the riskiest areas. David talked about how former entrepreneurs were the best product managers that he has. And what we all know about entrepreneurship is that you fail a lot more than you succeed, as opposed to like the turn the crank product manager who's working on your, cash cow business where they're just making money by building features or whatever it is. So I do wish there were an easier way to sort of quantify great product management. I just haven't found it. I'd love, Nikki and David, if you found it, I'd love to know about it.
David?
We are in too much of agreement here. It makes this not so controversial.
Oh, really, David? I thought you were going to have like a spreadsheet for us. So.
No, but I want to say something about KPIs and product managers. Being the CEO of the product, you can test the success of the product with its KPIs like conversion and so on, collection, revenues, and so on and so forth. But just like Sam said, you don't want cowards. If somebody always succeeds in the KPIs, probably they don't take enough risks, and that's a bad thing. So measuring product solely on KPIs, just like Sam said, it's going to fail for sure. Not an easy task. But on the other hand, and that is something that also was said here, we know a great product manager. We just know them.
Nikki, are there any specific KPIs or, kind of dry numbers that you're looking at when you're assessing how people are doing?
I can't say that there's numbers. I would say that I'm a person who always also pays attention to team retros. I'm never in all of them, but I do generally ask people how they go. I like to kind of know where people see product as either being additive or not. I'd also say that it's really interesting to kind of look back at the year and see the role that product has played in some of the big launches that we've done, and to understand, well, was this product person really integral to getting the right people in the room to move this forward and think about go to market and kind of really shepherd something? If they weren't, well, then that also would speak volumes about maybe their roles we've been talking about as the CEO and really having all the agency. But if they are, then that really is something that you could really clearly look back and remember the role that they played in many things, because they would be the person. We often talk about quarterbacking here, which I understand is a very Americanized term to even use, but we talk about the product person as kind of quarterbacking the team, calling the shots, getting everyone moving down the field. And it's really clear if there's no quarterback or if they're not doing their job. So it's something that, as everyone else has just kind of said, it's clear. You see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you guys a series of kind of quick questions, like that, should be maybe more polarizing because David is uncomfortable with all disagreement. So one of the questions, this came from someone in our chat here, but also a question that I've had on the list, and I know David feels very strongly about this, but wireframes or written specs? David, you want to start? I think I mellowed out your answer the last time you sent it.
I kind of, again, I'm feeling that I'm controversial enough, but let's start. Specs are a bad thing. Don't use them. Middle Ages, bad. Nobody reads them. Terrible to write. Bad thing. Wireframes has usage advantages. One of the best methods I know. They allow you they're very good to communicate product. They allow you for sanity check before you started the UX and the development. So I think they're great. And they are my favorite means of product communication. But I've seen others that work effectively, not specs. The famous 6-pager of Amazon as an example. So I don't think wireframes are the only solutions, but specs, come
on. Sam?
I'll disagree. Not that I want to write MRDs like I did 20 years ago when I first became a product manager, but I'm a fan of narratives. I mean, obviously keep it to a page or a page and a half, but I feel like while wireframes and mock-ups and designs are important, I think it often misses the complexity of the features that you're trying to deliver. I mean, we have, like, give you an example, at Zendesk, we have 100,000 customers, long tail of tens of thousands of folks that use our product, 2, 3, 4 users, and then a small group of folks that, have thousands of agents using the same product. And it's very deceptive to show business rules, how we want the next generation of business rules to look like in a screen, when that's going to be vastly different when 80% of your users are going to have 10 business rules and 1% of your users are going to have thousands, right? So I feel like the way that it looks is nice and wireframes is good, but you do need a level of narrative to describe sort of more that you just can't capture in a picture.
Nikki, it feels like we have a hung jury here.
So yeah, I don't think there's an easy answer. Like I would love a world where we only had wireframes, but I do think that what I notice with many of the teams I manage is that we're oftentimes speaking with like such specifics around kind of like very small business problems that we're trying to solve that a wireframe is not going to be able to communicate a lot of that. I'm the first person to kind of get on a whiteboard and start drawing something out. I'm a visual thinker, but oftentimes we do have to revert back to, as Sam was saying, I think that the narrative and explaining something. If we do that, I often say, let's try to keep it short because no one wants to read that 20-page document. But it does happen, I think, more often than not.
Yay, a disagreement.
Before we move on to the next rapid fire question, we actually have a question here that came in from an anonymous attendee who I guess doesn't want to be in the center of this. But speaking of wireframes, what's the best formula for power/control between UX designers and PMs in forging the vision for a product's experience? David, I'm curious to hear you answer, also because the product that you guys are working on, because Wix is such a design heavy product. Curious to hear where you stand on this.
Yeah. Process wise, in most cases, product will have the tractor, what we call here, or the basic wireframe, and then UX will take over and finish with the final UX design. But what I find is that in good teams I have, where product and UX are collaborating very well, the line between product and UX kind of shifts according to the specific people's talents. You have products that are not so visual. They will move the wireframes in a very basic tractor stage, where it still, by the way, can explain the entire business, and I believe it can, and that's where we're in disagreement, which I cherish so much. And move it to UX in an earlier stage where the UX will take over. I have product managers that are super visual and have strong, and they will make almost all the UX and will leave basically the UX designer with almost only design and UI to do, which, by the way, for a gifted UX is a risky place. And then you need to shift them maybe to work with several products. But I do think basically it depends on personal type of, I don't have the line well defined. It moves a little bit from here to there.
Yeah, Sam, where do you stand on this?
Yeah, I think the power dynamic that's much more interesting is between product and engineering than between product and UX. Typically what I find is that we're pretty simpatico with designers, whether it's like a conceptual UX person or if it's a user researcher or if it's a pixel pusher or whatever it is, and product and UX tend to think alike and get along alike. I think the real challenges are how do you actually maintain the power dynamic with engineering, who are often not on the same page and often have very divergent interests and goals and motivations and things they want to work on, et cetera, et cetera. So I kind of agree with what David said, but I also don't really the UX people, the people I go out to lunch with, the people that I want to travel to other offices with, the people I want to meet with customers with, et cetera, et cetera. I never think about the power dynamic between me and UX. So it's an interesting perspective that somebody would ask that.
And someone actually just asked, and this will probably be our last question that we can respond to, but Sharif Tariq asked, do you guys use interactive prototypes at the product stage, and specifically as an alternative to wireframes, and to provide developers with a bit more direction in terms of where you want the product to go? Nikki?
Yes, all the time. Yeah, we're a huge fan of interactive wireframes and designs. I think it's also really helpful also for stakeholders to understand. It's the best thing before the product is actually live to kind of see what interactions are. And so we're a huge fan of that here.
Okay. Anything else on that?
Because we're moving very quickly, we don't have the time to do this all the time. But for some products, it makes like when you work on a complex visual problem, it's a huge advantage.
Yeah. Okay. I said it was the last question, but another really good one just came in. So this is from Ed. Ed asks, there seems to be disagreement that teams should solve the problem together. However, if the PM passes wireframes that have been vetted with clients, doesn't that imply that the PM is solving most of the problem? I think it's a really good question. Sam?
All right, here's something we disagree on. David and Nikki both use the term mini CEO. I hate that. I don't know why. And somebody I think earlier asked in the chat this idea as like PM as superhero, and I think there is this, anti-pattern or whatever where PMs, like Mark Zuckerberg's a product manager, or whatever, like all the entrepreneurs that are billionaires now started as product managers. And there's this idea that PMs have, typically naive, young, early in their career PMs, that they are the person, they're the font of knowledge, and they're the ones that are going to solve the problem, him or herself. And I do think that can turn off, engineering, it can turn off UX, it can turn off other folks. And I think the magic trick is, which probably is what makes a good CEO anyway, is that I have a clear idea of what I want to do and I have a clear vision for what I want to have to happen, but I don't really have an idea on what the direct path is. And I want to use the team, my, engineering and design and marketing and other counterparts to get there. But I do think that back to Ed's question that PMs who say build this tend to not be successful over time because they tend to disenfranchise their partners. And I worry about that.
Yeah. David?
Unfortunately, I have to agree with Sam. It's embarrassing. No, but I agree with him totally. We have a methodology to tackle this challenge where before the product manager goes and do the basic wireframes, we have actually a meeting with the stakeholders from engineering, from UX, from BA, from everyone that basically is required to do that. And through the research, the product manager says he gathers the info and does the decision making with as much team effort as they can. Eventually, it's communicated with wireframes that probably the product manager will draw, but that's the means of communication. The work that was done behind it has to be a teamwork. Otherwise, it's a bad product manager, just like Sam says.
Nikki, you get to say the last word here.
I agree so much with what David just said. I honestly never think of this as like a one-person show, because a product manager might understand the pain points of the customer. They may be able to create the wireframes and write down the requirements, but it's generally all hands on deck, making sure that the execution of it and the problem, like really solving it with technology, like actually coding it, making sure it goes out okay, going through QA, and then post-launch analysis with the help of product and maybe even an analyst, making sure that you actually succeeded on the KPIs that you were seeking. That's never just one person. So I never look at it as a product person as a superhero. I know someone asked about that in the chat. I think product people, I think everyone in this, everyone working in this thing you could say is a superhero, and we all have different powers. And all those powers kind of have to work really well together. So that's my final word on that.
I think that's a perfect final word. Thank you so much to our panelists. This has been really lovely, and I think we can do this a lot longer because I have a whole list of questions we didn't get to. So maybe we'll revisit those in the future. In the meantime, just to our attendees who are still here, before you have to jump off, just so you know, you're going to be getting a follow-up email from us where there will be a recording of the webinar should you want to share it with friends and colleagues. And also a quick plug that Debate Club Live does happen around the country. The next one is going to happen in February in San Francisco. If you go to productcraft.com, you can click the event tab and you can find out more about those. They're totally free events and there's usually drinks. And also we are having our first ProductCraft conference, which will happen in San Francisco on May 9th. To learn more about that, which a lot of the formats that we're looking at for the conference are going to be similar to this, not just boring lectures, but kind of more interactive sessions. So we hope to see as many of our participants there. Again, if you just go to productcraft.com and look at the events tab, you can do that, and also subscribe to our newsletter. And thank you again all for being here, and we'll see you again soon, I hope.